Okay, so what I've pulled up here is, and you should have this. If you don't have this, it'll be in the on Blackboard in the additional practice section. But these are just some review tips to keep in mind while you're taking this test, while you're preparing for this test, and things to kind of help you out. Some of these things will apply to you this semester. Some of these things will apply to you second, third, and fourth semester. These tips, these review tips, are not just for 110. They're for first, second, third, and fourth semesters. So that's why they're written this way. Anyways, so a couple of things. First of all, the format of the test, if you haven't been told, it's 25 questions. You can miss 2 and pass the test. If you miss more than 2, so if you miss 3 or more, you're going to have to remediate with a tutor. There may even be a remediation session that I will hold virtually via Zoom, but you will need to retake the test. And unfortunately, if you don't pass the retake, then they're going to withdraw you from the semester. So this test is important. So it's really just a matter of reorienting you to some of this math stuff that either A, you never learned, which I don't think is true, or B, it's just been a while since you've used it, and we'll get into the swing of things. I'll also highly recommend Registered Nurse RN, her stuff on YouTube for not only dosage calc, but also for really anything while you're pursuing your RN program. She's got a lot of good stuff there, if you haven't checked out her site. Okay, so a couple of things just to keep in mind. Make sure you're reading the question. A lot of times students will read a question. It'll say something like this, where it'll say, how many tablets are needed if ordered to administer 650 milligrams BID? Now, it's also going to be important that you know what some of these things mean, right? So BID means twice a day. Now, there are some references, and if you ever have a question about that, what that means, please just either ask in the chat or let me know, because I need to know what you don't know. But 650 milligrams BID. Now, this doesn't tell you, it doesn't tell you specifically, are they looking for how many tablets would you give per dose, or how many tablets would you give per day? And that is something that sometimes you gotta have to figure out. And the way that I always kind of try and keep these things in mind is, if you think about it from the standpoint of, imagine, BID means every 12 hours. You probably are not going to be with the patient, for the first and the second administration of this medication. So just to keep in mind that you're most likely are going to be, the question that's going to be asked is per dose. If it doesn't say per day, you can safely assume per dose. Okay. So that's why this was solved the way it was solved, to give you 2 tablets. If I want to know how many per day, I would just take the 2 tablets twice a day, 4 per day. Make sure you have labeled your units. Can someone tell me, are you going to have a paper test, or is this test going to be on Blackboard?
It will be on Blackboard.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So we probably won't have to worry too much about choosing the correct labeling unless they try and trick you. So I will double check and see if that's something like in your practice sets, if that's something that is a distractor or something. But I have a feeling that that's not a distractor, so I will check on that. Reconstitution is just, it sounds like a tougher word when they say, like, you're going to have to know how to do these reconstitution medications. And a lot of times it sounds more involved than it is. And really all it is just, they have a powder, they add some water to it. That typically happens in the pharmacy. And now you have a reconstituted drug. And some medications allow for adding different volumes in order to get to different concentrations. So if I add less water, I get a greater concentration. And if I add more water, I get a lesser concentration. So it's kind of like dilution, right? So I always use, in my mind, I have the example of lemonade. You can make lemonade strong or you can make it weak. It's the same thing with these medications. Obviously, you can't just do whatever you want. But in this example here, this is saying that if I were to administer 2 milliliters, or I'm sorry, if the order is for 80 milligrams, then I can use one or whichever of these concentrations to get my milliliter dilution. So I have a 40 milligram per milliliter reconstitution available, or I have a 20 milligram per milliliter constitution available. And if it tells me to use the stronger one, then I use the stronger one, which is the 40. Or if it tells me to use the weaker one, I use the weaker one. Notice also that in order to get the same amount of drug, you would use less milliliters with the stronger concentration. All this will make a lot more sense when we get to some of the actual problems. These are just some of the things that I know get missed commonly, which is why I put them towards the top of these review tips. For your test, you need to know these basic conversions. You need to know how to go between units and also go and stay within units and move up either into milligrams, micrograms, grams, milliliters, liters, etc. You need to know these. This will not be given to you. You need to know how to calculate that and then how to work with it. If you're converting a patient's weight in pounds to kilograms, you need to know to divide by 2.2. If you're converting grams to milligrams, you need to either, if you're going from grams to milligrams, you multiply by 1,000. If you're going from milligrams to grams, you divide by 1,000. And I'll work out some examples so you can see what that looks like. Here's what's going to get you on these Blackboard tests is your rounding rules. So a couple of things. A goal is to make sure that your answer has at least 2 digits in it. So if you have 2, 2's fine, okay? But if you have 2.5, technically that's a better answer. And then if you have 0.2, you want to make sure you have a 0 in front of it. Like this here, I did 0.5. You want to make sure that you have 2 digits representing your answer. Again, you don't need to use trailing zeros, so you wouldn't need to do 2.0 or 5.0. But if it's a number less than 1, definitely have that 0 in front of the decimal. And then you'll see that when you're doing the practice tests and the practice set on Blackboard, that you'll get your answer wrong if you forgot to put the 0. So don't forget those zeros. Rounding. Rounding is important, and rounding is going to occur if it's a number greater than 1. So 1 point anything, you're going to round to the 10th. Okay, so the 2 here is in the 10th place. Okay, so 5 would round this up to 1.3. If this were 1.24, again, I'm rounding to the 10th place, which means I look at the 100th place, which is the 4. 4 is less than 5, so we leave it at 1.2. Okay. If I have a number that's less than 1, so 0 point anything, then I need to look to and I'm going to be rounding to the 100th place, which means I need to look at the 1,000th place to tell me what to do with the 100th place. Okay, so 0.969, that 9 would round the 6 to a 7. So that would be your rounded answer, 0.97. And then for 0.963, 3 is smaller than 5, so it would stay at 0.96. Notice that I still have this 0 here, and we're kind of breaking the rule of 2. Remember, the rule is have at least 2 digits in your answer. So here we have 3. The other thing that you need to know is when you're doing basic conversions, like when you're going from grams to milligrams, milligrams to grams, or milligrams to micrograms, micrograms to milligrams, you do not round those when we're doing basic inter-unit conversions. Okay, so like the first 5 or so questions you'll see on your test are going to be basic, just doing basic conversions. So I'm going to go from milligrams, micrograms, things like that. But there might be some tablespoons to milliliters, teaspoons to milliliters associated with that as well. But when we're staying within the metric system, do not round those answers. Let me just give you an example here. So I'm going to open up my camera, see if it's working here. Good. And then I'm going to, let me stop the share for a second. And then if you double click on my screen, it should blow up my image. If it doesn't, let me know. Well, actually, you don't need to let me know. If it doesn't, it will be blowing up on when I post this on YouTube. You'll see what I see essentially in my screen. So let me give you an example. I'm going to give you 2 scenarios, and these are rounding scenarios. And I start with this just because this will A, help to introduce you to how I kind of set up problems, and B, it'll help you out when you're going on and trying to figure out the rounding of different problem sets. The problem that I've seen and have run into over the years, and even I'm seeing this in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th semester students, is they're still rounding things incorrectly. And so I want to make sure I get you guys straight on how to do that. So the first example is I'm going to take 125 micrograms and I'm going to convert that to milligrams. Now, there's a couple of ways to answer this question. I can, I can just move the decimal point 3 places. Then again, you got to know which way that's going to go. Or I can, pay attention, which, and making sure I knowing to multiply or divide. But if you ever get stuck, I'm going to highly recommend that you start practicing this strategy known as dimensional analysis. I know if you took chemistry, that might be something that you just hated or loathed, but it can be something that can help you when you get stuck with some of these problems, because you don't have to know any kind of formulas in order to utilize dimensional analysis. And this is what I mean. So pay attention to how I'm asking. I'm going to ask myself questions out loud, and just kind of show you my thought process. And asking these questions are helpful for when you're doing these types of math problems. So step 1, I have 125 micrograms, but I need to convert micrograms to milligrams. And I know, because you have to, you already have to know, I know that I can convert micrograms to milligrams. So what do I want? I want milligrams. And what do I have? Micrograms. And that's what I'm trying to get rid of. So basically, I've set up a scenario here where we can you can put that over 1 if you want to, where I have micrograms that will be eliminated, and then milligrams will be what's left over, which is exactly what I want to do. So you'll see that for those of you who go through the nursing program and go through my review sessions, because I've been doing the review sessions now for several years, and I'll probably continue to do them as long as they need me to do them for you guys. And so you'll see me do this often. Personally, when I answer this question, I look at this and I say 0.125. Okay, and that's the answer. But me not giving you another strategy doesn't help you to learn in case you don't know how I got to that answer, which is why I'm showing you this. So this is not Dr. Rad's way. This is just dimensional analysis, and it's just a tool that helps me to show and visualize things. And it can be a helpful tool if you ever get stuck when you're trying to do some of these problems. Okay, so we know that if we go back to our chart, it said that 1 milligram is equivalent to 1,000 micrograms. And that's how we know where to put things. Okay, So I just put the 1 with the milligram, the 1000 with the microgram. I don't have to think about it. I just put it where it goes based off of the things I should already know. And then when I do the math, I do 125 times 1 divided by 1000. And then that's where I get 0.125 milligrams. That is your answer. You do not round that answer. You do not round that answer. Again, do not round that answer. Okay.
Why don't we round that answer?
Okay. So you don't round that answer because this is just a basic unit conversion. So you're not, this has nothing to do with any drugs, any medications, any applications. So you don't, that's why you don't round it. When the question asks for a medication, then yes, you do want to round when there's a medication involved, where you're allowed to round, I'll say, but which is in most cases. But for this, we're just doing a basic unit conversion, micrograms to milligrams. Do not round your answer. And then the best answer for whomever asked is if you put 0.13, that answer is wrong on your test. So I'm trying to help you out and tell you that that's also why you don't do it. But you do not round basic, simple conversions. That's what these are considered, simple conversions. Now let's look at a situation where you would round. Okay. Now this is also going to be a simple conversion, but the difference is I'm going to a different system of measurement. So pounds are like the American standard measurement for weight, whereas kilograms is the metric system of weight. So when you go from a different system, then you have the permission to round. Again, I'm not the one who's making up these rules for you guys. I'm just trying to help you pass the test. And I'm trying to show you the nuances where this would apply. Okay. So we know that 1 pound is, I'm sorry, 1 kilogram is 2.2 pounds. So if I'm going to set this up, again, using my dimensional analysis strategy, and again, what do I want to get rid of? What do I want to get rid of? I want to get rid of pounds. So that's an LB, not a 16. I know that looks like a 16. And then what do I want? I want kilograms. And I know that 1 kilogram is equivalent to 2.2 pounds. Again, I'm just asking my question. So I'm showing you the, someone just asked, so each time we convert, no rounding. I'm actually showing you the time that you will round. And when you're staying within the same unit, metric to metric, do not round. Okay, so I'm just going to write do not round metric to metric. Okay, so when you're going from metric units to metric units, and that's all it's asking you, and there's no medications involved, don't round that. Okay. But when you're going from, you do round, when you're going from, we'll just say American to metric. Okay, so pounds are the American units, metric is the metric units. And remember, for nursing and for medicine, the metric system is the standard because that's the standard worldwide. So you're not going to put somebody on, you know, a gallon IV, right? You're going to put them in liters or milliliters IV, if that makes any sense. You're going to give them a gallon of ice cream, but you're not going to give them a gallon of IV solution. Okay, so 196 divided by 2.2. I'm going to pull up my calculator here since I didn't bring my phone down with me. $196 divided by 2.2 will give me, I'm just going to write down here, 89.090909 repeating. Okay, So that's the other reason why, and this is also a clue for you why you would round this, is because you get this long, ridiculous number. And so it makes sense here to go ahead and round to the nearest 10th. So for this one, it would be 89.1 kilograms. So again, basic metric to metric conversions, no rounding. Pounds to kilograms, round. If you need to. You don't always have to round, because sometimes the answer ends at the 10th place, or sometimes it ends as a whole number, and so you don't have to round. Just depends on if it's there. So let me see if I can create a question for you where you would potentially round. Usually it's the milliliter type questions. So give me 1 second. I'll have an example for you in a second. Okay, let's see if this works out. So let's say there's a medication that's supposed to be administered at 250. I need to administer 250 milligrams of this medication, and it's available. So this is I'm just going to write O for order. It's available in 150 milligrams per milliliter. Okay, so this is just some fictional medication. This is not anything in particular. If you came in late, I explained when you would round to the 10th versus the 100th. So just watch the replay and you can see, or refer to the review tips. All right. So the order. Oh, that's a good question. Someone asked in the if you're allowed to use a calculator on an exam. Yes, you will be given a calculator on the exam, or it might just be on the computer that you'll have available to you. I don't know exactly how they suss that out, but you do have a calculator available to you while you're taking this test. They're also going to want you to show your work, so be prepared for that as well. This is another reason why I write these things down, so at least you know what to write down. If you're like me and you just write 0.125 and don't even think about setting up anything, you just write down the answer. Now you at least have a clue of what you can write down if you needed to. Okay, so the order is 250 milligrams, and I want to know how many milliliters of this medication to administer. Okay, so when I'm doing this, I'm going to do the same thing, except when they give you the conversion factor, they give it to you in the form of milligrams per milliliter. So again, what am I asking? I want milliliters, and then I need a way to convert milliliters to or milligrams to milliliters, and I do. That's why we have this available dose. So 150 per 1. When I use the calculator, 250 divided by 150 will give me 1.6666 repeating milliliters. How are you going to give someone 1.666666 milliliters? Well, you can't administer that. You have to make the decision to round that number to, because it's a number greater than 1.7 milliliters. Okay. So when I was talking about rounding before, only basic metric conversions, when I'm going from micrograms to milligrams. Here, I'm going from milligrams to milliliters. So I will round that if I need to. But when I'm going from micrograms to milligrams, do not round those basic metric to metric conversions.
So will you always put what the drug that you have available as the top number?
What do you mean?
Like you put, or what you have on order as the top number, I'm sorry. So you put 250 milligrams over 1. You will always have what you have ordered as the top number. Does that make sense?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so I just chose to show this over 1, just so you can see that we're going across, so when you multiply across, divide by the bottom. So yes, it will always be the top number because it'll always be a whole number. Even if they give you, like they say the order is 0.5 milligrams, you could still say 0.5 milligrams over 1. So yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good question. Okay, so I'm going to bounce back to the review page here. So we discussed some rounding. Again, there's some additional rounding rules. This is what I was talking about earlier when someone asked, how do I know when to round to the 10th versus the 100th? The rule is if you have a number greater than 1, okay, so it says volumes, but a number greater than 1, round to the nearest 10th if you need to. And if you have a number less than 1, so 0 point something, you round to the nearest hundredths, okay? And that's the rule, at least for within the nursing program. Let's see here. Yeah, and I gave you some other things here, like rounding should occur after all calculations have been completed. The exception to that rule is when you're converting pounds to kilograms. If you're using that conversion to answer a question, go ahead and round that to the 10th and then solve your question from there. Yes, so Olga asked the question, do you round metric to American? Yes, if you need to. Sometimes you don't, because sometimes metric to American just comes out to a whole number. So like if you, any number times 2.2, like kilogram wise, any number times 2.2 is going to be a whole number. So you won't really have to round. But when you go from American to metric, you're reducing by 2.2, and that's why you might need to do some rounding. And then when you're staying within the American system, we usually don't ask you those questions, meaning I'm not going to ask you, like, if the patient was ordered 2.5 tablespoons, how many teaspoons is that? We typically are trying to get you to convert things into the metric system to practice that, because metric system is kind of your ball game now, being in the nursing profession or going into the nursing profession. With tablets, some medications, you're welcome. With tablets, some medications are tablets. They're considered scored. Scored tablets can be given in half. Okay. You always have grandma or grandpa or an aunt or an uncle who tries to cut it in half again. Unless it's scored twice, that's probably not the right way to use that, even with their, pill cutter. But that's just, typically if it has a score in it, it means it could be broken in half, or it's meant to be cut in half, or can be cut in half. If it's a capsule or even a caplet, usually those cannot be cut in half. So definitely not a capsule, but a caplet, possibly, I guess, if it's scored. Next semester, you'll start seeing what are called drops and drop rates. You can't give someone a partial drop, so drops are always rounded to the nearest whole number. So like if you had 39.45 drops, then you would give that person 39 drops. And again, do not round basic conversions. And I gave you the example, milligrams to micrograms, micrograms to milligrams. Now I showed you dimensional analysis. There's some other things. Now this should actually say ordered over half or ordered over available times quantity. I wrote desired because that is also the way that's written sometimes, desired over half, but ordered over half times quantity. You may have heard that. When you calculate flow rates, you're just doing volume over time. If you're calculating a drop rate, which you'll see next semester and second semester, you need to know that it's flow rate times drop factor. And if there's some examples of that, we'll definitely get into that over the coming weeks here. If you need to calculate a fluid replacement volume question, this is the formula that I put together to kind of help you guys out with that. You take what was actually voided out over the original or expected voided out. and then multiply with replacement volume, and that'll give you the new replacement volume. So I do advise using this formula. You can come about it with dimensional analysis, but there's a lot of fluid in, fluid out. You just got to keep those things straight. But you'll practice this, and most students do not miss this question. And I can't remember if it's on your 110 test or not. And again, I advocate dimensional analysis, but as long as you're answering the questions and you're getting them right, just keep doing what you're doing. Okay. My way is not the right way. There's more than one way to get these right. It's just that if you're answering a question 3 different ways and you're getting the same answer, then choose the way that's easiest for you to remember how to do every time. But if you do it 3 different ways and get 3 different answers, either one or none of those answers are correct, right? So let's just work on a good strategy for you guys. All right. So let's go through a couple of practice questions. And then just kind of work through a few of these just to kind of get an idea of how to do some of these questions, what they might ask, what they sound like or look like. So I'm going to pull up another practice set. Let's see if I can find it. And then what I'll do is I'll bounce back and forth. So this is at least looking at your, at least looking at your, sorry, you can't even see what I'm looking at. So give me 1 second because I lost my, here we go. So this is like a paper version of what you have on Blackboard to some extent. Okay. So this, again, this is in the, it's called the Microsoft OneDrive link that's on Blackboard. So you'll be able to see these things listed here for practice. So just as a review, before we do anything, am I going to round my answer to number 1?
No.
Good. Yeah. So if you said no, good. If you said or thought yes, the answer is no. Okay. What about pounds to kilograms? Do you think I might need to, or if I need to, should I round to the nearest 10th?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, good. What about milliliters to ounces?
Yes.
Yeah, potentially, right? And the reason we're saying that is because we're going from milliliters is in the metric system, ounces is not in the metric system, right? It's in the American system, or the American standard, I think is the name, the specific name for that. Milliliters to liters, will I round that?
No.
No.
Good, right? Because they're both within the metric system, right? Milliliters, milliliters, and then liters. Okay, so we don't round those. All right. So here's an example of a fluid replacement problem. Okay, that I briefly discussed that I didn't go over with you guys yet, but I'm going to show you how to do one of these just in case you get stuck, and then I'll let you practice the other one that's there. Again, I believe this is similar to what's on Blackboard. It was just converted to a Blackboard test. All right, so let me just write down the specifics and then I'll switch my screen over. So it says for every 125 milliliters out, we're going to replace with 40 milliliters. Say in. And then the actual output was 500 milliliters. Okay, so let me stop that and get this big. Okay, so a couple things to keep in mind. Now, if you rationalize to your answer and you got the right answer just by kind of figuring out like, okay, well, I know that 125 goes in the 500 milliliters so many times, and then I just multiplied that number by 40. You did like a ratio proportion. You did that right. You got the right answer. One of the things that I'll recommend is if you look at this, like for every 125 milliliters the person voids, you're replacing with 40. If he actually voids 500, are you going to replace with more or less than 40? And so this is a rhetorical question, so you don't need to answer, but thank you. I see it in the chat. Thank you. So, right. I'm going to need to replace more because I lost more, right? So if I lose more, I'm going to replace with more. Doesn't that make sense, right? If you work out and sweat, you're going to drink more water. Okay. Same concept here. Okay. So applying the formula that I gave you, if you do it this way every single time, you will get these right. But the actual output was 500 milliliters. The theoretical or expected or given output was 125. And the replacement volume is 40. Okay. Notice that everything's in milliliters. Technically, this is milliliters out, milliliters in. And it's just a way to kind of keep things organized, or at least that's how I try to organize things. 500 times 40 divided by 125 will give you 160 milliliters. And again, that's in. I just wrote these I's and O's just so you know which one is referring to what. So let's say you could get another scenario where the replacement volume is, or for every 125 out, you replace with 40. Let's say the actual output was only 100 milliliters. You're still going to give them some volume. You're just not going to give them 40, right? You're going to give them less than 40 because the actual void was under 125. Okay. So let's look at that. Let's say instead of 500 milliliters, so this will be like scenario 2, it was only 100 milliliters out. So I'm going to do the same thing, 100 milliliters, my actual output, over my expected output, which was 125, times my replacement volume. And if you do that, 100 times 40 divided by 125 will give you 32 milliliters of a replacement volume. The other reason I'm showing you this is because I don't want you to get hung up on the big number goes on top, because that may be true in most situations, but if they ask this question and they want to know what the replacement volume is and the actual output was less than the replacement volume, then now you know what to do with that. Okay. All right, let me go back to practice set here. All right. I always think that for most people, these are fairly straightforward, but if they're not, this is helpful, especially since this is your first semester looking at some of these things. You have a question that's asking about and saying that the patient is to receive or is ordered 500 milligrams, right? 500 milligrams, PO, which means by mouth or per oral, BID, twice a day or every 12 hours. The question says, how many capsules will you give? Now, as a reminder, capsules cannot be cut in half. So you would never give someone a half capsule. Now, the question might be, well, what if the answer comes out to a half capsule? I'll just say this, that I'm the one who writes your test. And I know that anytime I've created tests in the past, I know that the tests have been changed, but there shouldn't be any questions that would give you an answer that would be a half capsule, just because I don't know. I don't know that you would know the answer directly just off of, the math to know, do you round that up? Do you give them, an extra one? Do you give them one half less? So I don't know that answer. And that was actually be a really good question to ask your instructor who's going to be giving you the test, just to confirm, hey, if we get a half capsule, do we round that up or what? And then kind of see what they say about that. But to my knowledge, you shouldn't have to worry about that. Also, if you pay attention to, like, if you've ever had a prescription written, it usually works out where they're not giving you, like, 3/4 of a teaspoon every quarter hour for 9 days of a particular medication, because it just becomes complicated. Then people stop taking the medication, or in this instance, an antibiotic, which might be necessary for whatever they're trying to treat. So they always try, at least from what I understand, they're going to try and simplify it based off of, some things. So like this 500 milligrams, notice, is a multiple of 250. Okay. So the next dose up would probably be 750 milligrams, maybe, and then 1,000 milligrams or 1 gram. And then that would just adjust how many capsules you'd give. All right, looking at the label. The label has some information on that. It's helpful. It tells you that the whole bottle has 100 capsules. Now, to my knowledge, you as a nurse, you're probably not going to see this particular label. This would be in the pharmacy. The pharmacist and the pharmacy technician is going to administer the quantity needed for the time frame in which the patient would be taking the medication, put it into a separate container, and then you would just administer however many capsules per the treatment period. So here, each capsule is 250 milligrams, and in this entire bottle, there's 100 capsules. Okay, so that 100 has no variant on your calculations, but the 250 per capsule does. So let's work that out. I'm ordered 500 milligrams. Again, I just put that over 1 just to kind of organize things. I have available 250 milligrams per capsule. The question says, how many capsules do I administer? So if I'm looking for capsules and I know the milligrams per capsules, then I know that I can set up using dimensional analysis. 250 milligrams per capsule. And then I'm going to give them 2 capsules per dose. All right. So I'm just going to write per dose. If the question asks how many capsules to administer per day, then you would say 4 capsules per day, or you can write per day or /day. It's perfectly fine. Let's say you would prefer to use the ordered over have, or what I've incorrectly written as desired over have. Remember, the order is what? 500 milligrams. What do you have available? 250 milligrams. And what's the quantity? 1 capsule. And that's how you would set this up using the ordered over have setup. And you'd get the same answer. So again, there's not one right way, but whichever way you do it, just make sure you're getting the right answer every time. And then you can at least have some confidence that you're setting up these problems correctly. And then how would we change these questions? Well, we just change them by doing, let's see here. Go back to my screen. We would change this by changing the order. So on your test, instead of 500 milligrams, it might be 250 milligrams. It might be 750 milligrams. It might be 1,500 milligrams. Whatever it is, that's what you do. As if it were that easy, right? Okay. All right. You probably saw something or a variation of this question where you have potassium chloride elixir, 40 milliequivalents. What the heck's a milliequivalent? Well, the good thing is with these medications and stuff, we always have a way to get to where we want to go with the milliliters, because typically the available will help you to cancel out the milli equivalents. You don't even need to worry about what that is, but it's just the unit of measurement for potassium chloride, okay? Or at least for the elixir. There are some medications that are measured in milli equivalents, some medications that are measured in units, but most of them you're going to see in milligrams, micrograms, and the such. So the question here is, we're using, this is a suspension, and we're going to, we need to dose the suspension, and then afterwards, make sure you mark the cup. So I don't know how this looks when you actually do this on your, or on your actual test, like that's on Blackboard, but, you know, the computer test, but you, I'm sure there's a way that someone's checking to see how you're circling or marking your mug. If I were doing this, I would keep in mind that since it's asking for milliliters and I only have these milliliters listed on the cup on the right-hand side, I would safely assume that my answer is going to be one of these answer choices: 30, 25, 20, 15, 10, 7.55, or 2.5. So if you ever get stuck, just know your answer is likely on the cup, okay? So let's set this question up. So 40, 20, and 15. I think I can come back to that, so see it. Okay. Yeah. All right, so what is the order? I'm getting a sheet of paper here. The order is 40 MEQ, but I don't want 40. Or I mean, I don't want MEQ, I want milliliters, right? Because I want to know how many milliliters to administer. So it says that we have 20. So let me first, what do I want to get rid of? Milli equivalents. What do I want left over? Milliliters, okay? So 20 milli equivalents per 15 ml. So this is a little bit different, right? If I was setting this question up and doing ordered over have or ordered over available, I would do 40 MEQ over the 20 MEQ times 15 ml. Okay, so this is the dimensional analysis way. I didn't put it over one, but you can do that. This is the ordered over have or the ordered over available way times your quantity. So just a couple different ways to set this up, but no matter how you set it up, you're going to get to the same answer, 30 milliliters. Okay. And then you would just want to make sure you mark your syringe. So I'm going to see if I can do that here to show you how I would mark the syringe. So I can annotate my. So I'd either just mark it here, or I would circle, you know, the 30 ml just so we know where we're at. I think I saw on your, at least it looks like on the key for the practice sets, they kind of create like a box. So like, it's like, I don't know if you're supposed to draw like an object over top of where that is, and at least be in that range that you're highlighting it, and like drop it into place, is my guess is what they're having you do. And that's fine too. So, but if we're on a paper test, you know, you circle it, you mark across the cup, or even just mark at the 30. Don't even worry about the tablespoons over here. Try not to worry about that. You're going to, because they're there, but. All right, let's do one more, and then we'll reconvene next week. If you have students in your class who are unable to attend these meetings, just let them know that they will be posted on YouTube. They can watch whenever they like. And also, if there's another time that works better for the majority of students, I'm available pretty much all day Thursday. And then Tuesday, I'm available in the morning before noon. So If there's something that works better for the class, you guys can get together and discuss that. Otherwise, we'll just keep this time, and then you can always watch the review. And then if another student wants to give you some questions to ask me during the review, by all means, please just send them my way. And you guys can also email me too. My email should be, you should be able to contact me through Blackboard as well. So just you can do that. Okay, so let's do this last question here. It says you administer 250 milligrams Dilantin by mouth. How many teaspoons will you give if it's labeled as shown below? So the number one reason this question is missed is because teaspoons, a lot of times students will answer and give it in milliliters and not give it in teaspoons. So make sure, again, you're reading the question and answering it. And also, just because you see the Dilantin question later on doesn't mean it is always the teaspoon question. So just make sure you pay attention to how the question or what the question is asking for. So close out of that. And open this up here. So what's my order? My order is 250 milligrams. And what do I have available? I have 125 milligrams per 5 milliliters. Okay. So again, I'm going to pop back over to the share screen since we bounced away from that. So I'm looking at my label here. Shake well tells you it's a suspension. So there's, it's liquid. And then this is what tells me, what do I have available? It's 125 milligrams per 5 milliliters. Sometimes this will tell you that there's 500 milliliters of this solution or 200 milliliters or 100 milliliters. That doesn't matter. That just tells you how much is in the bottle. You need to know how much you're administering per dose or what's available, your potency. Okay. So 125 milligram per 5 ml is what's available. So let me write that, or stop the share. All right. So I don't want milligrams, I want milliliters, and ultimately I want teaspoons. I know how to go from teaspoons to from milliliters to teaspoons, but I need to know what this would be from going from milligrams to milliliters. So it's 125 milligrams. Now, the common mistake is a lot of students will write 1 here, but if you look at the label, it says 5 milliliters. Okay. So when I do this, I get my answer. I get 10 milliliters. Now, I need to do one more conversion to be done with this. I need to convert milliliters to teaspoons. Okay, so sometimes teaspoons is just abbreviated a little t, but I'll also just go ahead and write teaspoon so we don't get hung up there. 1 teaspoon is 5 milliliters. If you don't believe me, the next time you look at a measuring spoon, you will see it'll say 1 tisp, 5 mil. Okay, 1 tablespoon, 15 mil. It's another way to kind of learn these things is, make some pancakes or something from scratch. Okay, so 10 divided by 5, 2 teaspoons would be the correct answer. Now, there's a shortcut to this question. 5 milliliters equals 1 teaspoon, right? Because that's something you already have to know. So couldn't I just substitute the 1 teaspoon for the 5 milliliters and save a step? And the answer is, yeah, you could have set this up like this: 250 milligrams times 1 teaspoon over 125 milligrams, just by doing a simple substitution. And I would have gotten the answer I wanted, which was 2 teaspoons. So again, just a variety of ways to kind of show you how to do this stuff, guys, to get your mind thinking. So between now and next week, go ahead and practice some of these things. I think if you spend, 20 minutes to half an hour just kind of reviewing these things, and I don't even mean daily, just you know, every now and then just kind of sit down, work through the problems, and then get away from it, and then take another day, come back to it, work through the problems, and always try and do a fresh, you know, like it's fresh, like it's the first time you're looking at it. And, you know, at some point you're going to memorize the answers, not a problem. You'll get plenty of practice. And like I said, we'll get some other questions to ask. So that'll be it for today, guys. If you do have questions, I'm gonna I'll put my email into the chat here, and you can always just message me or email me. And then I'll see you guys next week. While you were just jumping off already. All right, there's my email address if you need it. Take care, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.